From the Performance Racing Network at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Trouble, we got a car in the wall. 4, 5, 6 cars pile in. Jimmy Johnson now pulls to the bumper. He's going to try to make a move on Truett.
It's Racers Odds. Now, here are your hosts, John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, and Jeff Cogliandro.
And welcome once again, everybody, to yet another edition of Racers Odds here. We're coming to you as a joint production of the Performance Racing Network and the Visa Network. You can also catch us on NASCAR.com, YouTube, and also the Visa Network as well. There's all kind of places, Jeff, you can find us. We're available. We're here to give you on every race day the kind of information you need to find the smart money when it comes to wagering on America's top form of motorsports.
Yeah, we continue to each and every week try to delve a little deeper in what's going on, check from the racetrack, check with all our information sources so you understand who's hot, who's not, and as John said, where the smart money needs to go.
Critical time of the season, which might make strategy a little bit different for a lot of different drivers. We have 5 races to go and 7 spots available in the playoffs. The playoffs, of course, start with 10 races to go, and if you're not inside the playoffs, you have a lot of questions to answer to your fans, your sponsors, and your owners as well. Everybody wants to be there. So now this is the second of 3 road courses over the year. We have Sonoma, Watkins Glen, and then, of course, the new Roval at Charlotte Motor Speedway. But, Jeff, from a crew chief standpoint, we have stages of 20, 20, and 50. You can go 20 laps without pitting at Watkins Glen. You can't go 50. This could mean for some really interesting strategy.
Well, it always does. And when it comes to running a road course, it's all about coming up with what it takes to be at the head of the pack at the end of the day. And that's what you'll see from the drop of the hat. You'll see some of these teams that'll be talking about, trying to go past and basically stay out when the first stage opens up. You'll see other teams trying to do it a little bit different and try to hit those stages to where you wind up. Main thing is when you get to the third stage, you're at the front of the pack and you got yourself in a good position to be able to come down pit road, because you shouldn't lose a lap if you're up there in that top 5 or 6. Make your final pit stop and then basically hold on. Hopefully the cautions and everything else will keep you at the head of the pack. I mean, that's what it's very, very simple. Manage your tires, manage your fuel.
And when it comes to favorites to win a track, at a track like this, you may think that a road course racer is a road course racer, but these are 2 very different tracks between Sonoma and Watkins Glen. And Jeff, basically the one thing is at Watkins Glen, it's a lot more about speed.
It really is. And one of the things we don't want to overlook, folks, is today pit road. The guys are having to pit the cars in an opposite direction that they normally are. Even at Sonoma, we still use the normal, basically what I consider, you come from the right side of the car, you change the tires there, and then come back around and do the left side. This time you'll be doing the left side of the car first and then coming back around to the right side to complete the stop. And this year, different than last year, NASCAR put a stop to some of the teams being creative to where they were changing the inside tires first and then going back to the outside and finishing it up last. They have now deemed that illegal, unlawful, however you want to put it.
In the name of safety.
In the name of safety. So that's something that will change a lot of these teams, and some of them have adapted to it, been practicing so they can be fast on pit road and get the job done. But pit road, pit strategy will wind up determining who will be challenging for the win at the end of the day.
Now, this is a very difficult race to handicap and to predict because we've had a lot of different winners come from a lot of different places over the history of this event. Now, to help us figure out how to make the odds right and what should be handicapped is Jeff Cogliandro. And, Jeff, before we dive into our matchups and who the smart money might be on, there have once again been updates when it comes to legalized sports wagering across the country. What's the latest?
Well, John, incredibly, it just moves so quickly, and we're seeing the landscape change so rapidly. It's been very surprising. Just this week, while North Carolina has put in place to legalize sports wagering at one of their Harrah's casinos on a Cherokee Indian reservation, they also appear to be one of the early adopters for in-race wagering, and they're looking to be upstarted and going by the beginning of September, which is a very aggressive time frame. But as soon as they can latch on to in-race betting, they're going to try and expose the public to that, which should be just outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jeff, when you look at a road course in NASCAR, it certainly is difficult to predict, isn't it? Because of, for lack of a better term, the twists and turns and what might go on and what kind of strategy somebody might play.
Sure. And just to get back to what Jeff said, you talk about just a natural pitting strategy. Well, now you add in drivers who need stage points, drivers who are looking to win, and that just layers on top of what is already a very strategic race, a very troubling race to try and call just on its own merits.
So over the years, there was a time when the road course was somewhat of a throwaway. A lot of drivers would jump out, let another driver come in, the so-called road course ringer. Then we figured out if you are going to win a championship at NASCAR's top level, you have to run well at every type of racetrack, and that includes those road courses as well. So we got road course ringers, except they were the guys that were winning on other tracks as well. Let's check in now with Denny Hamlin, who has had his share of success on the road courses, about who are the benchmark drivers when it comes to turning right.
Yeah, I think my teammates is kind of the benchmark, is what I've seen. And this is over the last, call it 3 to 4 years at least. Certainly, I know that, if I benchmark myself off of them in practice, I know they're going to be in the top 5, especially on speed. That they might not finish there, but they're going to be there on speed. So it's a good way for me to kind of judge kind of where I'm at and where I need to work. So the 18 in particular has been super fast at this particular racetrack, even though he hasn't won as many times as what you would think. So the 19 has just been extremely good on road course finishes as well over the last handful of years, and so he hasn't always shown lightning fast speed in practice, but he's shown it in the race. So certainly I've got teammates that I'm going to be looking at for sure.
And when you do look at his teammates, he has Martin Truex Jr. Of course, he is the guy that has won 3 of the last 4 road course races anywhere on the circuit. And also, we have another one of those drivers, Kyle Busch, who is always good everywhere, but on the road courses especially. Hammond, it wasn't too long ago that Kyle Busch swept both road courses in a season, and that is a huge feat.
It really is, but it shows the talent that Kyle definitely has when it comes to just driving a race car, period. But all the guys, including, you can't, leave out Eric Jones. I mean, Eric is getting better and better and better. He needs a really strong day because of his point situation. And don't believe for 1 second that these guys are not sharing a lot of information about what's going on, including the strategy. So watch for Joe Gibbs to basically be doing the same thing all the way across all 4 of their teams.
All right, let's throw this out there as well. Clint Boyer has won on the road course as well. And, of course, this time last year when we came to Watkins Glen, a young man that had not had much success or even much experience on a road course before, Chase Elliott, came up and pretty much gave everybody a butt whipping, Jeff.
Yes, he did. He showed really what he was made out of and what he, kind of surprised, I think, a lot of people, how good he was on the road course here a year ago. And it hasn't stopped. He comes in here today, winds up sitting on the pole. So he says, it wasn't an accident, folks. I am real when it comes to running these road courses.
Yeah, and he's certainly got a handle on Watkins Glen. Now, for more of a handle on Watkins Glen, every week on the Racers Odds, we go to Pat Patterson, who is at the racetrack, for more on who the top drivers really are when it comes to road course racing.
Well, good afternoon, Johnny and Jeff, and welcome to Watkins Glen for another sold-out Sunday to watch the Monster Energy Cup cars get after it this afternoon. As you can see over my shoulder here, we're looking at turn 1, maybe one of the most critical parts of the racetrack. And there's no question this afternoon, 37 starters. Kyle Busch is the fastest guy in the field. We've got pretty blue skies. We've had some weather move through here this morning, but nothing at all more than a passing shower. Now, I know the big question you guys have been talking about, and that is, what's the scuttlebutt in the garage? Well, the big thing in the garage is exactly who I just talked about. Kyle Busch, really, really fast, 10-lap averages. It was Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, and Alex Bowman. So keep your eyes on those guys. Blaney will have to go to the back of the field today. They found a problem with his car after pre-race inspection this morning. Now, if you look at the way they qualified, one interesting fact that you want to focus on is the fact that this was an impound race. Impound race means that these cars went out, did their qualifying lap, and that's it. They put them away. So crew chiefs had to make a decision about, do I want to go fast in qualifying, or do I want to have something to really work with during the race this afternoon? And so if I did that, maybe I qualified in the middle of the field. So you can't necessarily make a great decision today based on where all of these guys qualified. On top of that, keep in mind that crew chiefs are going to play a major part of the strategy today. You know, on Thursday night in Eldora for the trucks, they made a decision there that got Stuart Friesen his first win, the crew chief did. Same thing yesterday afternoon, Brian Wilson, crew chief for Austin Cindric, made a critical call that got him a win at the end of it as well. So don't forget, we usually don't settle things at Watkins Glen till the very last minute. Like I said, it's a beautiful afternoon. We've got a full house here. I expect that Jimmy Johnson is going to be the focus of a lot of talk this afternoon. He's got a new crew chief. Will it make a big difference today? Hard to say. This has not been the greatest track for Jimmy Johnson in the past. Still looking for his first win here. So we'll keep our eyes on the 48 this afternoon. But again, a great afternoon to go racing here in Watkins Glen. And we think that when it's all said and done, we'll get one of those last lap battles that we always see here, which will top off a super race day afternoon. Have a good one back there.
All right, Pat, thank you very much. And there have been some classic last lap battles here at Watkins Glen. I can remember a few right offhand. But you know what's interesting, Jeff Hammond, is the fact that Ryan Blaney's betting line hasn't moved very much, even though he's going to the back of the pack. In fact, hasn't moved at all since that announcement this morning that he's going to the back.
I think maybe what's helping that situation is the people were watching what happened on Saturday. I think a lot of folks saw that you could go to the back of the field and work your way back up through. And even with the fact that we got the stages, it's going to allow you to gain some ground. So you can't really rule him out. He's been pretty fast. But in my book, this group is a lot different than the one on Saturday. There's a lot more talented drivers. It's going to be a lot tougher to pass. So it'd be real interesting to see how the crew chief comes into play, gets out of sync, and gives that 12 car an opportunity to gain some ground against the competition. Because once he gets there, everything else is forgotten.
All right, so the two main fully road course races in NASCAR, Sonoma and Watkins Glen, when you look at the two different tracks, one thing that is different as well is there are more passing opportunities with the speed at Watkins Glen. So it should be a great afternoon, a little bit challenging to handicap, but that's what we're here for on the Racers Odds. We've got a couple extra experts coming up for you today to tell you where the sharp money may be. Stay with us, everybody. We'll give you all the info you need here on Racers Odds.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Gone Racing.
There's still Will the Wheel.
The weekly NASCAR show that gets you ready for this week's big race and more.
Oh, yeah.
Take a ride with us to Victory Lane on Gone Racing.
We just got these lines last night. It was plus 700 on Brad Keselowski. He's already down to plus 550, so I think we know where the money is.
It's going that way.
And that's where my money would have been, too.
Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, Channel 204, and SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90.
Great job.
Do you use the expensive blue or yellow pills to charge your sex life? Are you thinking about it? What if we could promise you the same results for less than $3 a pill? If you're paying $20 a pill for the other pills, you're getting taken to the cleaners. Call On Call Pharmacy right now and save as much as $700. 800-884-7919. On Call Pharmacy delivers the exact same results for less than $3. You'll save more than $16 a pill for the same results. And right now, radio callers will get 44 blue or yellow pills for $120 with free discreet shipping. You can save more than $700 off pharmacy prices. Call On Call Pharmacy now and take advantage of this special offer. 800-884-7919. Charge your sex life now and save a ton of money. Call now and get your 44 pills and save over $700 and qualify for free shipping. Stop overpaying and call right now. 800-884-7919. 800-884-7919. 800-884-7919.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back once again, everyone, to Racers Odds. We are finding ourselves at the second of 3 road course races this season, and time is running out. 4 drivers vying for playoff spots. There is not much room at the end and not much time to get it done. 5 more races, 5 very unique racetracks, and only 7 spots left. So now let's go to another one of our experts. That, of course, Steve Makinen, who's editor of VSiN's Point Spread Weekly and odds maker. Steve, when you look at this racetrack, I think it's really important for anybody wagering to look at the predictability grade that you give, or the handicapability grade that you give to these racetracks. What do you find at Watkins Glen?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on, by the way. The Watkins Glen is not one of the easier tracks to handicap. I give it a grade of C, and it's actually ranked behind 14 of the 23 tracks in terms of handicapability based upon past statistics. Now, one of the reasons that kind of happens is this is one of those tracks where a lot can happen in the closing lap. So, I mean, a lot of times you'll be in a good position on a wager or on a bad position if you're on the other side of that. And something can happen in the last few laps. There's a lot of aggressiveness at that time, and you can see guys who dominated the race or were running up front for most of the race fall back quite a bit. So you got to learn to live with that as a bettor, and this is one of those tracks where that happens.
The thing that impressed me, Steve, when I was looking at your rundown today, was the fact that you actually had Chase Elliott ahead of Kyle Busch. I'm a little bit, explain that to me. How did your simulation come out like that? I know he won last year. I know he's on the pole, but overall, I mean, it's not a lot of data on Chase when it comes to road courses.
Well, one of the things that's key to my simulation is I don't go back a whole lot of years. I mean, if he did good in 2016, it doesn't really matter to me. I mean, Kyle Busch, if he won these races back 3 years ago, it's not as important as what's happening now or what's happened the last few times he's been at this track. And the other thing about Chase Elliott is he had a good run at the other road course too. So I mean, he's proven himself to be very competitive at these. Busch hasn't been as good recently at these tracks as he was prior in his career, so I think that's the big difference there.
Hi, Steve. This is Jeff here. I have a question for you. When it comes to your simulations, does the time of the year affect the simulation and what a particular driver or team might be striving for, whether they've already, punched their ticket to the playoffs or whether they're barely hanging in the top 16? Does that come into account when you do your simulations?
Well, the only way it actually comes into account quantitatively, if you will, is in how they've been running recently. So you'll see a pattern of say like a guy like Matt DiBenedetto come on recently. So a lot of that he's done real well lately. He's climbing in the simulation every week. Other guys, maybe a Kurt Busch, a guy like that who's made the playoffs, he's taken some more chances now. His recent results aren't going to be as high if he hasn't done as well because of maybe failing at those chances he's taken. So that's the only way that really comes into play. Now, if you're a bettor, you have to judge that a lot differently. You got to take the odds. You got to figure in that strategy and how it might affect what you're paying for that guy on that given day.
Well, Steve, one of the things that's got me real excited is Jeff was talking about it earlier in our broadcast, the fact that so many states are starting to open up the sports book. And I understand now we're looking at the possibility of in-race betting as well as prop betting. Can you share a little bit of information about that? Because that's really got my interest.
Well, I mean, in-game betting and prop betting for all the other sports has wildly increased the interest from bettors in these sports. So I would have to imagine NASCAR would want to embrace that. I mean, I could see a situation where you're looking at maybe changing odds at, let's say, the end of stage one. The odds are different now. You can maybe you lost the driver already to a casualty, so you could either jump on another guy, or you could maybe change your wager on that guy to, if you're hoping he has a late race type of run or something like that. So there's a lot of good possibilities with that. And like I said, it's been wildly popular for the other sports, and I think NASCAR would really embrace that too.
Steve, for quite a while, I've thought about new ways that NASCAR will be bet, as widespread legalization occurs. A bet that I think that would garner lottery-type excitement would be a triple trio. And for those who don't know what a triple trio is, that would be predicting the top three finishers of each stage and then the top three finishers of the race. And if nobody won, then the jackpot would roll over to the next race. Is there any possibility that this could ever come to fruition?
Oh, you're talking something like a horse track then, hey? That would be fantastic. Yeah, obviously that. If you're doing it in some sort of pari-mutuel manner where the pot keeps flipping over, so obviously there could be some wildly large pots and bettors could really take advantage of potential huge winnings on things like that. That sounds exciting.
Hey, Steve, what, if any, movement did you see when it comes to Jimmy Johnson? Now, I think we all know just swapping out crew chiefs doesn't make a car automatically go faster because of what goes into these race teams and their preparation, but there just tends to be maybe a little pep in a step when somebody has something like that. And we saw Jimmy Johnson, number 6, when it comes to fastest 10-lap average. Have you seen any movement on Jimmy and the 48 team throughout this week because of the news?
Well, yeah. Well, from what I've read, the whole team seems excited. And that's a big thing. I mean, how you show up on track prepared, what your confidence level is of the entire team, all that is big when it comes to how a driver is going to perform in a given race. And statistically, it's hard to, again, quantitatively pick up on that. Now, these are advantages a bettor can have if they're really sharp and they're really following the news wires and such. You would think Johnson might be in for a little bit better day than what he's been seeing for the last few months here.
So, Steve, last question here. Basically, in a nutshell, who do you like as a winner for this race?
Well, my simulation calls for Martin Truex, and he's been good lately. He's been really good at these road courses. Sonoma, he was fantastic in June. So I think it comes down to him, Elliott, or Kyle Busch today, assuming that there's nothing that impacts the race, particularly late. If there's a real late race caution where somebody takes a chance with not pitting or something like that. If it goes as it should, then I would think any one of those three guys are mine.
All right, Steve Makinen, editor of VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Steve, thank you so much for your time, man. We really appreciate it. Love the insight and love the information that you give us, sir.
Hey, great. Hey, before we go, I wanted to run something by you guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Last week we talked about. I think one of the secrets I want to see for NASCAR wagering and something that they can embrace that could really grow it is individual bets on drivers. So you could pick a position and go over or under. And we talked about this last week. I think it's a secret to this really becoming popular. Like, for instance, today, Kevin Harvick doesn't look to have the speed that he normally would have. And recently, the way he's been running recently, I would have thought he'd be in a little bit of better position for today's race. So I made kind of a number. If you guys want to play against it, I just, as a little game here, I put a over-under position of him of 8.5 today. I have two different wagering options, too, that you could go off of that, as this is what I used to see in the market. You could take him over or under 5.5 and pay a higher price. Take him over under 11.5 and pay different prices for that, too. So Maybe we could start here. See if I put this number at 8.5 today for you. I don't know where each of you guys would like this.
Okay, I hate to do it, but because Kevin would be mad at us if I do this, but I'm gonna take the under. I'm gonna say he finishes. Now, when you say over under, would I say if he finished? I think he's gonna finish 8th or worse. So I would be taking the
ninth or worse.
9th or worse.
8th or better.
So would I call that under or over?
You would go over.
I would go over. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm doing the over, Jeff.
I'm doing the opposite.
You're doing the under.
I think right now, and what Steve's position was about, what he's doing as far as speed's concerned, knowing Rodney Childers and the rest of that organization like I do, they're worried about the long run car. So I really expect that car not to maybe show the speed in qualifying, but look for him to be moving up like he normally does. I look for him to move up inside that, top 8, and he'll be there by the end of the day.
Hey, Steve, I think that's a great idea, and we'll play the game. We'll see who's right next week. We'll remember these predictions because we have them on tape. We have them recorded.
I hope you guys will go out on a limb here.
All right. Yeah. Hey, thanks a lot, Steve. We'll talk to you soon, man. Keep up the good work. That is Steve Mackinnon, editor of VSiN's Point Spread Week. I think that's a great idea.
Well, that's why I'm excited about prop bets and everything else. The more diverse you can be, the more opportunities. I mean, maybe you're not really feeling warm and fuzzy about a head-to-head matchup. Maybe not about groups, but these kind of things, it's something different. And it gives you that little bit of wiggle room to do something that's unique and still be in the game. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I like that a whole lot.
And here's something that also could be really cool in terms of prop bets. If you would simply say, put out a prop bet and say, is an even numbered car and an odd number car going to win the race? It'd be even money.
I know how you are. You'd always bet odd because you're kind of odd.
But you're kind of the even guy.
I am.
So you would go even.
I'm kind of even.
Then you'd start going to look down. You say, well, if I had odds, I would have Kurt Busch, Austin Dillon. If I had evens, I would have Brad Keselowski.
I have Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick.
So again, there's just a tremendous opportunity out there for all kinds of different types of wagering, and we like to bring it up here. But as of right now, we have matchups, groups, and even odds for drivers to win the race. We'll dive into those when we come back to Racers Odds here in just a moment. Thanks for being with us, especially on NASCAR.com. We'll be back with much more in a moment.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Mackinnon runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. It's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Before the pros tee off for this week's golf tournament, the VSiN experts help you make the cut on long shots.
When I profiled all the players for this tournament, I said Schauffele's number one on my board. I like the odds, 25-1. Let's go ahead and play X.
Brady Cannon, Matt Humans, and Wes Reynolds are your weekly betting caddies and help you cash those tickets.
Don't be afraid to maybe take some longer odd guys.
Don't miss long shots, Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, the only golf betting show you need. Exclusively on Sirius XM Channel 204.
The IRS is the most feared agency in the world. You've heard ads from other companies offering to help taxpayers only if they owe over $10,000. Here at Platinum Tax Defenders, we're A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau, and we're proud to be one of the only tax firms in the country who understands that people who owe less than $10,000 need help just as badly. The IRS doesn't care how much money you owe. They'll still garnish your wages and even seize your assets. So whether you owe just a few $1,000s or hundreds of thousands, call now for your free tax consultation. If you qualify, we may even be able to reduce your tax debt down to a small fraction of what you owe. So don't wait until the IRS seizes your property and garnishes your wages. Call 800-856-1330 and get your tax problem resolved once and for all. That number again is 800-856-1330. 800-856-1330.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
And welcome back, everybody, to Racers Odds. I'm John Roberts. He is Championship Crew Chief Jeff Hammond. And also with us, we have Jeff Cogliandro, who is one of our odds-making experts, and also Steve Makinen from the VSiN Network joins us every week. Want to remind you, you can see us on several different formats. We're available on YouTube, NASCAR.com, PRN, and VSiN, and hopefully more formats to come as wagering on sports such as NASCAR grows across the country. So want to get a quick congratulations out to the folks up at Watkins Glen. They have sold out their grandstand for the 5th year in a row. That's 32,000 seats, but also this time around, they have sold 28,000 campgrounds. So people are out in force at Watkins Glen, and Hammond, they're in for a great show. I love road course
Great
racing.
show, and at the same time, I've been up there before, rode through the infield up there. Great party. I mean, these folks, they know how to do it. They've been there. I mean, basically, when you get there on Thursday, they've been there since Tuesday. So they get started early and they stay there late.
So let's just hope they make it through the race. That's important. So earlier this week, it was announced by Hendrick Motorsports that 7-time champion Jimmy Johnson was going to get a crew chief swap because of the urgency to make the playoffs. Kevin Mendering was out. Cliff Daniels is in, and so now Cliff's first race with Jimmy Johnson is at a place, Hammond, where from a crew chief's perspective, you can make a big difference.
Yeah, it's actually exactly right. And the thing is, right now, a little background on Cliff Daniels. He was the engineer working with Chad Canals during many of those championships that, Jimmy was able to achieve, while working with Chad. So this guy has got a lot of experience as far as sitting beside that crew chief, being a part of the conversation of what changes and whatever decisions we're going to make. So it's not like he's not totally, this is the first time for this guy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. A little bit more pressure, but I feel like he's got a lot of confidence. And the main thing is he's got his driver excited. He's got the team excited. And we're going to see whether or not it plays dividends at a place where Jimmy, when you look at the numbers, are pretty dismal.
Yeah, he's never won here, and there's not too many tracks that you can go to and say that Jimmy Johnson hasn't won. Now, we know just one human being on a race team, because it is a team, cannot have that big of an impact right away. But just to note, Jimmy Johnson was 6th fastest when it comes to 10-lap averages on the race course, and that says a lot when you go road course racing. So with all that in mind, let us now jump into our matchups. We'll bring in our good friend Jeff Cogliandro and start at the top of this list to see where some of the matchups might be. And Jeff, before we get started, this is one of the places where you really like to go, where some of the smart money really is.
Yeah, without question, John. I think when you look at this first group of matchups, obviously the thing that catches your eye is that you've got Kyle Busch matched up against Martin Truex Jr. Now, by the numbers, Kyle Busch has been really outstanding this weekend, probably looks the best. But when you look at where they're starting, you've got Busch starting 3rd, Truex starting 4th, and you've got Truex as a plus 125 underdog. And just on talent alone, that's an awfully nice number.
Yeah, and also take into consideration, too, in final practice, after 19 laps out, Martin Truex's fastest lap was his 19th lap, Jeff, and that Jeff Hammond, and that put him up in the 2nd position after final practice.
Like I said earlier, you want a car that's fast, you want a car that's got long run speed, and I think that's what you're seeing here is that these guys have got both. So it's going to be an interesting battle once they drop the green flag, but I think you'll start seeing it early in that first stage who really has control of this racetrack.
Couple of different matchups, though, involved Chase Elliott, and he, of course, was our winner last year. Jeff, Chase against Denny Hamlin, Chase against Kevin Harvick, and Chase against Clint Boyer finds himself as the underdog. Actually, I'm sorry, as the favorite in all those matchups.
Yeah, he sure is. He's an overwhelming favorite at minus 220 against Harvick and Boyer. But I go back up just a little bit, and I like Denny Hamlin at plus 125 against Chase Elliott. Hamlin starting sixth was in the top 3 of all practice metrics. And frankly, I'm a little bit concerned about Chase Elliott's long run speed.
And one other thing you need to factor into this situation, it has been a while since Chase has been to victory lane, and then the running and the way the 11 car has been performing as of late. I think they got a ton of momentum coming in here, and I think that they're going to make the right decisions to be a factor today. So he has got, great resume when it comes to road racing, and I think the team right now is showing they're coming together at the right place.
So 24 laps out in the first practice for Chase Elliott. His final lap was his fastest, and also in the the first practice, his fastest lap was his 9th. So they were obviously doing a little bit of experimenting there, Jeff.
When you're sitting on the pole, and your car gets balanced, and you're not afraid to maybe try some things. A lot of times it can be real misleading when you see these guys jumping around or making short runs during the end of a practice. It could be more about trying to get information for the engineers to make determinations on what direction you need to go in, because nowadays they do not have as much practice as they once did. So getting the car balanced and then changing things up to get a direction, what direction you want to do what during the course of the race is very important.
So let's look at group number 1 of our matchups as a whole. And guys, what do you think out of there? Where would you go, Jeff, if you had to go with one of these matchups? What's your favorite?
Well, I think I would look at the 2 underdogs with Truex and Hamlin, both at $1.02. I just like the way each of them are performing. I like their recent history at Watkins Glen, and I'm not 100% sold on either of the favorites in those matchups.
Hammond, what do you think? Would you go somewhere here?
If I'm looking at anything, I'm kind of like looking at these 2 teammates, Kevin Harvick and Clint Bowyer. They're even money against each other. And I believe that when you look at where Kevin's been racing as of late, he's been able to get up there and be in position to, to win races. He just has got his first win recently. So once again, I'm looking at the momentum, and Clint Bowyer's not too far behind him. So I like the even money part. But if I was going to pick somebody right now in that matchup, I would put Kevin over Clint.
Moving on to our second set of matchups. Matchups number 2 here. We got Joey Logano teammate Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski being the favorite in that situation. And we all remember, guys, boy, the classic battle that Brad Keselowski and Marcus Ambrose put on at that racetrack. One of the greatest ever, perhaps, Hammond.
Oh, yeah, it really was. I mean, the whole thing is these guys are all skilled racers. They've all had, good runs, and they've had some bad runs. I mean, it's really about getting that rhythm, getting yourself in the right position, and getting that forward drive, especially around here at Watkins Glen. You got to be able to get through these fast corners and still be able to drive up off the corner and build more speed for the next corner.
Interesting, Jeff Cogliandro, that when you look at Ryan Blaney, even though he is going to the back of the field now, his line hasn't moved much, and there he is, basically even, or not basically even, but even with Kurt Busch, and also in another matchup, which I find kind of intriguing with Joey Logano, at Logano being the underdog there.
Yeah, when you look at Logano, although he hasn't been stellar recently at Watkins Glen, he has the type of talent and the type of setup that is sometimes very, can fool the handicapper, or he comes out of nowhere and has a great run. I like him as an underdog. Clearly, he'll have a very large starting gap advantage between the 2 drivers. So I think it makes sense, especially as an underdog.
And also, once again, just to recap, if I were to go with the Joey Logano-Brad Keselowski matchup and I were to throw $1 down on Joey Logano, I would therefore make my dollar back plus $1.25 if Logano was to finish ahead of Brad Keselowski. So with that in mind, guys, what do we think? Do we like anybody up here in particular?
I think if I'm looking, it's going to have to go deeper, and I'm going to take a look at Kurt Busch at minus 110 over Ryan Blaney. In the last 5 races at Watkins Glen, Kurt Busch has made up 60 positions between his qualifying position and his race finish, and that is by far the best on the circuit.
Yeah, that's something that's something that is a trend that he's been showing.
And I think let's go one step further. Some of the information we have got coming out of Watkins Glen, we already know that he's going to the back of the pack because of an unapproved adjustment. They got something they didn't like, and they were willing to take the hit to go to the rear of the field. So they're having to do some kind of improvement on their car or replace a part that's already faltered. And the thing that, that Jeff and I were talking about before we came on the air, when you start looking at the practice sessions and what's been going on, Kurt Busch has been very solid, showed a lot of speed over the long run. And I really believe cars that have this long run speed are the cars you're going to have to worry about at the end of the day. So it'll be interesting to see how the strategy plays out between these two crew chiefs. And right now, I have to give that advantage to Kurt Busch just because not only experience, but I think he's got maybe a better race car or at least a more proven race car since they're already making adjustments on Ryan Blaney.
So as we talk about these head-to-head matchups, you'll notice that at the bottom of your screen, we have odds for individual drivers to win the race. They are scrolling to take a look at there. So, guys, as we move on to our last set of matchups, looking at a driver, we talked to Steve Mackin a second ago about the hunger factor and how that plays into simulation. Certainly it's there. Certainly it's this time of the season. We see Eric Jones. Daniel Suarez is the underdog to Eric Jones. Very intriguing matchup right there. But for Eric Jones, he has that hunger factor on his side. He has got to watch every point.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a really good spot right now with points going into this weekend. 39 points. That's almost a race up. So if we could have another good weekend here at Watkins Glen, if we don't win, getting another strong showing, getting up close, hopefully in the high 40s or low 50s in points over the gap to 16th, we'd be feeling pretty good. So that's the goal. We're in the spot now where we have an opportunity to gain a lot of points and continue to pick up some positions in the point standings. I think if we continue to run well until the playoffs, we can advance up close to the top 10 in points, which is a stretch. Take a lot to get there, but I think we can do it. We do feel good about getting a win here. We've been so close to the last few weeks. We'd love to just close it out, but I think. I haven't talked to Chris about what we're going to plan for tomorrow here as far as strategy, because there is a lot of opportunity like there was at Pocono to either go for stage points or set yourself up for the end of the race. So it's a fine balance. We're going to have to really make a decision come tomorrow what we're going to have to shoot for. But definitely racking up points and trying to pick up a few more spots in the standings is going to be big for us.
So what you basically take away from Eric Jones there is that they are looking very closely at those points. And, of course, the best way to gain points is to run better. But Eric Jones is in an interesting matchup here, Jeff, between himself and Kyle Larson's. Eric Jones at plus 105. Kyle Larson is just notorious for kind of going in reverse when it comes to the road courses.
Sadly, that has been where he's gone. I like Eric Jones at plus 105. When you look at his last 5 road course races, he has an average finish of 11th. When you take a look at Kyle Larson, although he finished 6th last year at Watkins Glen, in his last 11 road course races, he has an average start of 4.8 and an average finish of 16.3. And I think he's just too unpredictable to be the favorite there.
Okay, another guy on this group we got to take a look at is one driver who does very well on the road courses and certainly has done well as of late. And Hammond, I know you've been looking a lot so far this weekend at Daniel Suarez.
Yeah, when you take a look at Daniel Suarez, I mean, this young man, when it comes to road course racing, especially here at Watkins Glen, he is just basically, taken to this track like a duck to water. I mean, his finishing position is roughly about average top of a 4th place finish in the 2 races he's run here. So I really like what I'm seeing here. We keep talking about the numbers playing in your favor. I like Daniel Suarez over Kyle Larson because of exactly what Jeff pointed out. Kyle starts really well, but he can't close the deal out. He's going to wind up, probably having an outside, top 10 finish here today, and I don't think that's going to be good enough against Daniel Suarez. I think we're going to see these two guys passing one another, and I'm talking about the 42 going back to the back and the other car coming forward as far as the 41 is concerned, going toward the front, and that's Daniel Suarez. So I like Daniel Suarez in this matchup.
Yeah, it's still the 14th and final practice, but that can be a little bit deceiving because of what you want to do when you go out on these road courses, especially during practice. They may not tell the entire story qualifying in practice, especially what's on what's called your enhanced weekend, where everything's squeezed up.
I'm going to say it's an impound race, and sometimes what you don't see is these guys are planning their strategy, not based off of qualifying, but planning on how their car is going to be in the race, and more importantly, in that final stage 3.
Okay, so teammate success does not necessarily mean that you will have success on the racetrack, but it certainly doesn't help. Chase Elliott had some good strategy going into this race last year, so his teammate Alex Bowman, who's part of a matchup we'll talk about here in just a second, but Alex Bowman is hoping that maybe that strategy they had last year within the Hendrick Motorsports camp can have an effect on all those cars this weekend.
Yeah, they obviously executed really well, but they were really fast as well. Chase does a really good job at these racetracks, especially here, and he was able to be competitive really regardless of what the strategy was. So I think on my side of things, I got to get the speed to where he was at. I definitely felt like I was more of the issue than the race car was last year, but just got to do the best job we can.
That's kind of cool. Alex brought some guests with him along the way there to the press conference. Got to be fun for those guys.
Well, and anytime you talk about doing something for charity, I think it's always a big deal, and it's good to see that he's continued to help those who need to kind of help. And talking about needing help, he even went to the simulator this past week to work on his basically lack of experience when it comes to Watkins Glen, trying to get better and get a better feel for the racetrack. So it looked like it maybe is paying off a little bit, qualified, pretty darn good. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays out, as far as the rest of the afternoon is concerned, and maybe he could finally get on track and have a good finish when it comes to the road course here at Watkins Glen.
So, Jeff, that matchup then, Jimmy Johnson and Alex Bowman, those numbers seem to make sense to me. They seem like they're placed in the right position.
Well, if you think Johnson is going to be able to best him, then they certainly are. One of the things I'll bring in here that you often see in other sports, whenever maybe there's a firing for lack of a better term mid-season, sometimes you see that team rise up in their first game with a new coach. And you kind of think of Johnson here in the same way. He hasn't had a lot of success at Watkins Glen. Now he has a new crew chief this weekend, and he very easily could have a very nice run and bust out with even a top 5 or a top 10, very possibly.
Yeah, and also that number that we like to look at, and if you look at the history of that number, that 10-lap average, that 10 consecutive laps on the racetrack as opposed to your qualifying lap, tends to tell a little bit more of a story. And Jimmy Johnson, of course, was 6th on that list. We have not seen Jimmy in that position on top 10 averages very much this season.
No, we have not, and definitely here at Watkins Glen. I think that's the one thing, and I agree with what Jeff C. is saying about how momentum can swing, how Jimmy maybe can get up on the wheel and do something that he hasn't done in recently. But when you look at his numbers overall at Watkins Glen, I think that he has a great opportunity to basically turn heads and make a lot of people, kind of feel like this is going to make a big difference, and hopefully it will, because his numbers up here right now, Jeff C., when it comes to Watkins Glen, are pretty darn bad.
Yeah, they sure are. But, he's a 7-time champion, and it wouldn't shock the world to see him come up with a really good run, a great points day, and consequently win his matchup.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if he were to win that matchup, though, that would just not be a very high-paying matchup if you were a Jimmy Johnson fan and were inclined to take that matchup. That wouldn't probably be.
They take whatever points they can get.
Exactly, the best place to go. So that does it for our head-to-head matchups among some of NASCAR's top drivers. When we come back to Racers Odds, we'll delve in to the group, see what group is matched up against other drivers, and see if there's anyone there that particularly gets our experts excited about going into this race this afternoon at Watkins Glen. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be back with much more of Racers Odds.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
A numbers game with Gil Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, our pleasure to have Jeremy Piven in studio.
I'm really good friends with Julian Edelman. He and I are a very similar size and almost identical, except he's an elite athlete. I'm not. Other than that, everything lines up.
Same person.
Yeah, same. I run the same routes.
Every time we see Julian Edelman on Sunday, we'll be thinking of you.
There you go.
A numbers game with Gil Alexander. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern. VSiN.com and Sirius XM 204. VSiN, the news you need to win.
Jake was in big trouble with the IRS. He owed how much?
$92,000.
Ouch. The IRS left no room for Jake to breathe.
They put a lien on my house, took all the money out of my bank account, took money out of my paychecks. So it was a nightmare.
He needed help fast.
I figured that all these companies were the same until I called Federal Tax Management. You could just tell they knew what they were talking about. Right then and there, I felt like I had some hope.
Stop the liens, levies, and garnishments fast and qualify for one of several special IRS programs that could reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. So, how'd it go for Jake?
They did what they said they would do. They came through for me. I ended up saving an unbelievable amount. I was so jazzed. I was extremely happy.
If you owe more than $10,000 in back taxes, take Jake's advice.
Give Federal Tax Management a phone call. If they help me, they can help anybody.
Call the Federal Tax Management Hotline now. 800-425-6381. 800-425-6381. 800-425-6381.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
And now more Racers Odds with John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, and Jeff Cogliandro.
Now, one of the things that's different about road course racing that is actually very different than going to an oval is there is the opportunity to race in the rain. It is very rare. It doesn't happen much. And when it does happen, it's not necessarily the problem of the rain on the racetrack. It's the problem of the frost on your windshield and not being able to see when you're going well over 100 miles per hour. So what's the thought, Jeff Hammond, of going racing in the rain if we had to?
From the crew chief's perspective, I mean, all of a sudden you're wondering, are the windshield wipers going to work? Is the defroster you're talking about, is it going to be effective and keep the thing from fogging up on the inside? And oh, by the way, is the tail light going to work like it needs to so nobody don't run in the back of you? So you hopefully you don't get a lot of rain and you can stay on the dries. But if you have to go to rain tires, trust me, folks, all bets are off at that time. No reflection on you, Jeff C., but no, all bets are off, at least in my book.
Yeah, nothing you can do about that. Now, the clock you see at the top, that's the countdown clock to the green flag. So it's very unlikely also today that we will have to go to rain tires. The radar looks very clear, so that is a good thing. We'll get this race in.
But they have had some rain up there. That's the reason why we're talking about it.
Yeah, it has happened. It has happened. We hope it does not happen. Jeff Cogliandro is our wagering expert here on the show. And Jeff, usually when we look at some of these groups, you tend to see the big four tend to be in the first group almost every time this time out. If you look up and down the groups we have as a whole today, I don't see Martin Truex Jr. or Kyle Busch. You're really your two favorites when it comes to today's race.
No, they're very inconspicuous by their absence. I think a big part of that is because they're such overwhelming favorites going into the weekend when these groups are made up, that they didn't essentially want maybe two drivers that maybe wanted even money in plus and the other one at plus 120. It just would have offset the group too much going into the weekend without any of the things that have already transpired so far.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's take a look now at our Group A and see who is involved in this group, which tends to have some of the favorites in it to begin with. And it should not surprise us that among this group, you have Denny Hamlin. Chase Elliott is your odds-on favorite in the group at plus 150. Kevin Harvick and Clint Bowyer. And one of the reasons Chase Elliott is regarded so highly in this group, he comes in as the defending race winner, and that always gives a driver an advantage. Okay, so Chase Elliott is one of those drivers that has a little bit of an advantage here. Hammond, when you look at this, he's got the odds-on favorite right there, but some of those guys that could potentially finish ahead of him, it is a bit odd. We don't usually see this, especially at a road course, but let's remember Clint Bowyer has won at the road course before, and he comes in at even odds with his teammate Kevin Harvick.
Yeah, well, when you take a look at those two guys, Kevin is good here at Watkins Glen, but he's definitely better at Sonoma, so that gives, I think, a little bit of advantage to that, number there. But I think the main thing we don't want to overlook is we keep talking about Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin is very good on road courses. He's very smooth. He does have that momentum coming in here. And I think what is, unique, and I think, Jeff C., I want to go back to the fact that we don't see, Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch here, but yet we saw them at Sonoma. So it's a big difference here. And I want to ask the question that we got out of Steve Mackinnon a little earlier. Does this have something to do with the grade that Watkins Glen has of being like a C, that the odds makers feel like they need to take these two basically top dogs to even the betting field out? Is this what it's all about?
Well, I think it really speaks to their dominance over anybody else that could be in the group. When you look at the Gibbs cars, just so strong all year long, and certainly we knew Kyle Busch was going to be a player. Truex has been incredibly successful on the road courses. I think it just speaks to how good they are that they didn't want to offset the group going into the weekend.
So if you look at this Group A, our first group, and you look at the drivers that are in there, if your favorite driver is going to win you any money off of this thing, you got to go through Chase Elliott. He's the odds-on favorite, and chances are that's because he's coming in here as the defending race winner.
More than anything, just being fast last year, was nice, and I think that's what helps more than anything. Whether you had won or not, just knowing that we had some decent pace, and I think that's the most important thing. If you have pace, then the rest of it can come. So hopefully we can have that again on Sunday.
And clearly the odds makers feel as if he may have it again, being today's Sunday, as Chase Elliott potentially winning this race. As you look at our Group A, it's Hamlin, Elliott, Harvick, and Clint Bowyer. If you were going to bet this group, Jeff Cogliandro, what do you think? Where would you go?
Elliott's just too short of a price. And when you start to look at Hendrick as a team, every driver in the Hendrick team lost net positions between qualifying and their finish over at Sears Point. Just looking at this group, Hamlin appears to have the best overall profile with his team, track history, his recent history, his qualifying spot, and most importantly, his odds value.
All right, so Hammond, out of that group, you don't have to put any money on it, but you have to tell us if you like somebody.
I'm liking like what he said, Denny Hamlin. He's the one that looks like he's Mr. Steady Eddie. And if anybody in this group right here probably can, handle Chase Elliott, I think it'd wind up being Denny Hamlin.
All right, let's move on to Group B and take a look at the drivers that are in here. Of course, Brad Keselowski, he was involved in that head-to-head battle with Marcus Ambrose that was so cool not too many years ago. His teammate Joey Logano's in this group at plus 310. Ryan Blaney and Kurt Busch both at plus 280. And, Jeff, I think when you look at this group, you look at a mixed bag of results over the years on road courses, mostly positive.
Yeah, it is mostly positive. I think Keselowski here is the one that catches your eye as the favorite at plus 195. But then you look at the rest of the group. Logano hasn't been all that strong this weekend. You've got Blaney, who's going to the back. You've got Kurt Busch, who has by far and away been the most successful of this group when it comes to progression from qualifying to finishing position. So at odds of plus 280, if I had to pick one, I think I would go with Kurt Busch.
Hammond, what do you think if you have to go that direction?
I'm 100% agreement with what Jeff has just laid out. I think that's a great choice with some of the things that are going on. You got to realize it's been a while since Brad has been really that good here, as well as Joey Logano hasn't really shown the speed I expected out of them. And again, I keep talking about long run speed. They could surprise us and show us they got that after we get started into the race. But I still believe right now that Kurt Busch can run with all these guys, and in the long run, I think he can take them down.
So even if we do feel at that spot that Brad Keselowski might be the hands-on favorite in this group, Jeff, the plus 195 is just not that lucrative a bet, is it?
No, not to defeat three other drivers, especially when one of them has really been as strong as Kurt Busch has been at Watkins Glen.
On to Group C we go. We got Eric Jones, Daniel Suarez, Kyle Larson, and Jimmy Johnson in there as well. Now, this I find just a little bit odd that out of this group, Kyle Larson is your favorite.
Yeah, very interesting. You know, when you look at this group, Daniel Suarez just jumps out. He is the best in the recent history at Watkins Glen of this group. We've got Larson, who's been inconsistent. Jones definitely been on the upswing and looks good. And Jimmy Johnson, who might just run for stage points today. So when I look at this group as a whole, from a pure talent perspective, I got to like Suarez at more than plus 4.5.
What do you think, Jeff? You've been talking about him all day long.
I'm going to say I talked about him, and I picked him in the other head-to-head matchup against Kyle Larson, and we see Kyle Larson in this group as the odds favorite. Well, if I think he's going to get beat in the head-to-head matchup, well, I would not believe he can't be beaten here. And the other guys pretty much the same way. If you look at Daniel Suarez's record here at the Glen alone, he has got a lot of confidence, and I think that they've got a car today that will probably be able to handle these competitors. I mean, the only one that concerns me out of this group, honestly, might be Eric Jones, but I still like the odds as far as the money's concerned. If you put 10 down on Daniel Suarez, you would make a pretty dang good return.
That would be an okay return. Now, when it comes to these drivers in terms of their playoff positioning, Eric Jones told us earlier in the program here he's feeling pretty good at 39 points to the good. Jimmy Johnson is sitting now for the first time in a long time. We just don't talk about a playoffs without Jimmy Johnson, but at minus 18 for Johnson out, for Johnson minus 12 out. Daniel Suarez finds himself minus 31 out. When you talk about that plus 460, Hammond, and you put it on Suarez, he is going to be the guy here. I really believe that some of the other drivers that are in and to the good, they're the ones that are going to be counting points. Jimmy Johnson's going to be counting points, but at 31 out, that's borderlining a full race. Daniel Suarez might be the group.
It's time to get it done, and I think this is one of those golden opportunities for him not only to score points, but also to possibly be a serious threat for the race win itself. I mean, he's already shown he likes the course. He knows how to mix it up. I think overall he's one of the guys you're going to, if almost like a long shot, and it pretty much shows that in that group he's in.
I think this is about the first time since we've been doing Racers Odds that we like a group this much, and one driver out of the group, not only to be potentially the one that gets the best finish, but at the same time, Jeff, paying out something like plus 460.
It's a huge price to beat just three other drivers. And again, you go back to his finishes. He's finished third and fourth the last 2 years at Watkins Glen, and it would not surprise me to see him move up throughout the field pretty quickly.
Now, depending on how high you are on Daniel Suarez right now, and you feel as if he may not only pull off that group, but potentially roll the dice and get a win here, his odds to win the race are 60-1. If you wanted to lay down some money on that, Hammond, you could get a lot of money back off of a Daniel Suarez bet today.
No, again, you look at the numbers, and it's hard to ignore those numbers no matter what. So, this young man right now, he's definitely got my attention.
Okay, and so some of the other drivers there that may be long shots, maybe some smart money there on a potential upset. Now, we're talking here about odds to win the race. That's why they become so big, because it's very hard to predict a winner. But at the same time, if you do predict it, if they do go on to beat that, that's why they pay so much, like 25-1, 30-1.
More than that. I mean, other pages got some interesting players on it, so we may have to get into those a little bit later on in the show.
All right, so there are your favorites in terms of a single driver to win. We still got a couple more groups to take you through. Then we'll go back to odds to win the race and potentially odds to win the championship, as well as it is crunch time when it comes to NASCAR's playoffs. It's right around the corner, and these drivers are getting desperate. So when we come back, we'll take a look at more on Racers Odds.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
VSiN is the Vegas Stats and Information Network. VSiN is analysis that's always on the money.
The total on this game, 8 flat.
VSiN is the home of legendary broadcaster Brent Musburger.
I do want to talk about the next big thing in Las Vegas.
VSiN is your all-access pass behind the counter of a Las Vegas sportsbook.
Trends don't pay the rent. They're looking at the number.
VSiN, what are the odds? Find out on Sirius XM Channel 204.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
We like to think of it as the multivitamin of digestive health.
It's the only product to combine all natural ingredients known for the digestive health properties into a single patented product. Praxid also comes in easy-to-carry packs. Praxid relieves, restores, and maintains a healthy digestive system. Praxid is available here for only $39.95. Shipping and handling is free, and your money back is guaranteed.
To take advantage of this special radio offer, call now 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735. Again, 1-800-829-5735.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back once again, everybody, to Racers Odds. I'm John Roberts, along with Jeff Hammond, Jeff Cogliandro, and also Steve Makinen joins us each week from the VSiN Network. You can catch the program on YouTube, PRN, VSiN, and other formats are to come, especially NASCAR.com. We're very happy to have them on board with us as well. So when we go back to our groups right now and you take a look at Group D, you have the one of the drivers that's starting on the front row and also one of the drivers who has certainly been making some waves lately with great finishes. That, of course, being William Byron. You find him at plus 115. Now, chances are, if you take into consideration, Jeff, just where he's starting, that might be a wise bet as him as the favorite, but it's just certainly not a high-paying bet.
No, when Group D, I think, is probably the most interesting of all the groups. There's just no chance to take Byron at plus 115. And if you were someone who was not confident in Byron, you could potentially bet on two of the drivers in this group. For an example, you could put $10 down on, let's just say, Bowman and DiBenedetto. And if either driver wins, you're going to get $35 in profit and your original 10 back. So you could have a nice return on betting on two of these drivers in Group D versus Byron.
Hey, if you know the rules, you can play the game. And the game certainly changes for NASCAR when we go to these first two road courses of the season. So a guy like Matt DiBenedetto had a great run at Sonoma this past season, actually one of the best he's ever had.
Top 5 finish.
Yeah, so top 5 finish. But then again, though, from Eric Almirola's standpoint, there are a lot of differences here in between the Sonoma road course and the course at the Glen.
Yeah, this is a really different road course from Sonoma and most other road courses. Most road courses you go to, you really just focus on setting yourself up for the next corner, and it's very slow and technical. This road course is like a super speedway or a 1.5 mile racetrack. It's so fast. It's hard to explain to people that don't understand, but for a road course, this place is so fast, and momentum plays such a big factor. Where most road courses we go to, it's about stop and go. Heavy braking, really slow corners, and then launch off the corner. Where here is just all about momentum. So this is definitely a tricky place.
So had you watched the Xfinity Series race yesterday, you would know just how tough it is. Those drivers were bouncing all over the place. Hammond hitting curbs and slowing down and speeding up. It's tough on a driver. It's tough on equipment. And it's also, of course, if you can make it through all that, it's a win you got to be really proud of. So let's move on now to Group E, where we get some drivers we haven't talked much about so far, and potentially a little bit of value here. The newcomer, Daniel Hemrick, finds himself at plus 345. Out of this one, Chris Buescher, somewhat being I guess Paul Menard, would be the veteran out of the group. Michael McDowell has a good road course. Michael McDowell used to be an instructor for Bondurant Racing School, so he's got some road course experience that others may not have. But Jeff Cogliandro, when you look at this Group E, would you touch anything here? Is this one of the what we might say a skipper?
Yeah, I would have to agree with that statement. You're right. You have Paul Menard, who has 15 Cup starts at Watkins Glen and an average finish of 22.7. Daniel Hemrick, on the other hand, only has 2 Xfinity starts at Watkins Glen, where he's finished an average of 13.5. There just isn't a separator here amongst the group, and I think under these conditions, the best thing to do is to stay away.
Okay, so I'm going to take Jeff's advice and just scratch it off the list right now.
Well,
it's a tough one.
I'd like to at least throw it in here if you wanted to weigh this in, is that Michael McDowell, and talking to not only to him as well as his crew chief, Drew Blickensderfer, they're having a little different approach right here, and they've had some success. I mean, Drew has had success on road courses, and Michael does bring a lot of experience here. It's a little bit like he's one of those sleeper guys in this group, as well as, Chris Buescher did win an Xfinity race at place, I believe it's Mid-Ohio a few years ago. So he's got, pretty good road experience also. But the main thing I think with the McDowell situation is I think that they've been pretty fast, pretty solid all weekend long. So they could wind up being a surprise here. Not to say it's a guarantee, but I like what Michael McDowell brings to this particular group. I think he outclasses the majority of them, including Paul Menard, who's been pretty good on road courses. I still believe he outclasses these guys overall. Just me speaking right now, a little bit out of turn when it comes to this group.
So, Jeff, one more group for us with 3 drivers in it. Group F, sometimes there can be value in the unknowns. Ryan Preece, David Reagan, Ty Dillon, not drivers we often talk about when it comes to road course prowess, but they're pretty close in terms of the odds there. 2 at plus 35, 1 at plus 255.
Yeah, I think when you look at this group, all the drivers are starting very close together. And in terms of their weekend progression, they were all pretty flat on the track. I think this is another one of those instances where you just don't have the data to back up betting on any of these drivers at Watkins Glen.
Okay, so with that in mind, let us, Mr. Hammond.
I want to just interject one more thing, just a little bit of, tidbit of Ryan Preece did finish in the top 10 in the Xfinity race. And then at Sonoma, he actually supposedly was going to win the K&N race that day until NASCAR decided he jumped the restart. But I think he's been making some progression when it comes to road course racing. I know that David Reagan, David's a great guy, but at the same time, his experience on road courses, he should be better than what he's showing out. And Matt Tiff definitely does not have a lot of experience. So in a 3-man race like this, Ryan Preece may wind up being a guy that you could take and make a little bit of return on your money for a low investment.
So with what NASCAR did with the point system, it's never too early to talk about championship. And in fact, when somebody wins the Daytona 500, it doesn't take very long for somebody amongst the team members to say, hey, man, we're in the playoffs, even though it's the first race of the season. So let's now take a look, because we're only 5 races away. The championship odds when it comes to winning the big prize in NASCAR. Kyle Busch, of course, should come as no surprise as the hands-on favorite right now. But Mr. Hammond, you were pointing out earlier today, that cutoff line, that top 16 right now when it comes to odds, William Byron at 80-1 to win the championship. That is a long shot, but once you get in this playoff format, strange things can and will happen.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of numbers, and I think that some of these numbers are going to change as far as once we get a little bit closer, and more importantly, once we get through Indy and the field is set. I'll be real interested to see how much these numbers do change, because I think they're sitting there waiting for the final number. So it may be an opportunity now if you're thinking maybe Kurt Busch is starting to peak at 25-1, or somebody like Alec Bowman or even Eric Jones. Pretty good money on these guys at this moment. But if something crazy happens, I mean, it could change a lot of things, especially if somebody like Daniel Suarez at 100-1 currently winds up pulling off a big upset here today at Watkins Glen on the road course. A lot of these numbers could change dramatically.
Jeff, do you see any intrigue in Chase Elliott at 12-1? Here is a guy over the past couple of years that has played the playoff game pretty darn good and made it a long way. I think when you look at some of those top dogs, they're probably going to be, that's probably where you're going to find the championship. But I think Chase Elliott at 12-1 is interesting.
It is interesting, but honestly, I like the other driver, Denny Hamlin, at 12-1. I think as hot as he's been, Gibbs has been so dominant. We've seen Hamlin win at a multitude of tracks. I just like the way his season is shaping up.
So back to today, we go to the Watkins Glen road course, the second of 3 road courses, if you put in that Roval, and odds to win the race today, no question. Almost everybody that you give simulations to, you ask in the garage area, that's where you need to be right now, is among those 3 drivers, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., and Chase Elliott. Kyle at 2-1, and Martin Truex Jr., Chase Elliott at 4.
No, and the thing is, I think is interesting. We haven't seen, I think, Chase Elliott this high up in odds to win a race in quite a while. So big, I guess you might say, hats off to him as far as not only bringing in he as the past champion, but more importantly, backing it up with a very good qualifying effort. And even his, 10-lap runs have not been all that bad. So he looks like a kid right now that wants it pretty bad. So it'll be interesting when they drop the green flag. Can he hang on and handle what's getting ready to come at him? And I'm talking about in the fact that Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. will be, I think, coming pretty quick to put pressure on him.
And also a little bit of intrigue there with Joey Logano and Jimmy Johnson, both at 30-1. Now, Logano was 9th on the chart when it comes to fastest 10-lap average. Jimmy Johnson at 6. Both drivers with a little bit to prove today. Jimmy with much more, of course, with the new crew chief. He needs a win desperately. Joey Logano is already locked in, but nonetheless, building up those stage points and those championship points are going to be huge when it comes to it. So when we come back here on Racers Odds, we're going to take a look at what we feel where the sharp money is. We're each going to give you an estimate or a prediction on which one of these bets is the one to take. So stay with us. We'll be back here in just a moment.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. It's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
As states have begun the legalization of sports gambling, the entire sports landscape is changing.
But I think we're going to see more and more states fall in line, and this gets legalized across probably all 50 states.
And so is the way you listen to Sports Talk Radio. I'm Brent Musburger, and on the Vegas Stats and Information Network, we follow the money and the games. It's sports talk you can bet on. So check out VSiN. Odds are you're going to like what you hear on Channel 204 and streaming on your phone or at home on SiriusXM connected devices and speakers.
Do you have an idea for an invention or new product? Do you think companies would be interested in your idea? Do you want to try to get a patent? Then call InventHelp now. InventHelp keeps your idea confidential and explains every step of the invention process. We create professional materials representing your idea and submit it to companies who are looking for new ideas. We have more than 9,000 companies who have agreed to review ideas in confidence. If a company shows interest in manufacturing your invention, we can negotiate on your behalf. We have helped over 10,000 clients receive patents. We also offer services including 3D modeling and animation demonstrating your idea, prototyping services, and we use state-of-the-art technology to show InventHelp client ideas to additional companies. Join the thousands of people just like you who chose InventHelp to pursue their idea. We are experienced. We are working for you. We are InventHelp.
Call us for free information at 1-800-542-6751, 1-800-542-6751, 1-800-542-6751.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
And welcome back once again, everybody, to Racers Odds. We're getting you ready to race at Watkins Glen International and perhaps make some wagers along the way where the sharp money may be when it comes to picking a winner or a head-to-head matchup here. But one thing we know for sure is all the way up to race time, some odds will move. And Jeff Cogliandro, our wagering expert, have you seen betting lines move in any place?
Yeah, we're seeing the odds to win the race shift quite a bit. Martin Truex is now plus 350, while Chase Elliott is floated up to 5-1, as well as Denny Hamlin has gone to 10-1. Two of the biggest movers are Kurt Busch and Eric Jones, who both went from 20-1 to now 30-1.
Okay, so a lot of shaking going on. So with that in mind, let us now start what we call our top picks from the week, from these matchups, head-to-head, maybe perhaps the odds of one race car driver to win the race. Let's start with Jeff Cogliandro and see what Jeff thinks is the best pick this week.
Well, I'm going to go with the head-to-head matchup of Kurt Busch minus 110 over Ryan Blaney. Again, you look at the last 5 races at Watkins Glen for Kurt Busch, and he's made up 60 positions in differential. Additionally, in those last 5, he has an average starting spot of 18th and an average finish of 6.8, which is the best on the circuit.
And Ryan Blaney is moving to the rear of the field, though, but he's got a very fast Penske Ford. He was 3rd on the list of top 10 lap average. So, Mr. Hammond, what say you? What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, I'm going to go back to the one we discussed a little earlier, and I'm going with Daniel Suarez. Great finishes as of late when it comes to this racetrack against Kyle Larson. Now, you see what's going on here as far as average finish versus average finish, but that's all the tracks considered. But when you look at what's been going on here, Daniel Suarez has got a basically average finish of 3.5, and we've already seen where Kyle Larson has been notorious for qualifying well, average start of 4.8, but when he winds up finishing, you saw that average finish 6.3. So I like this matchup. I believe it's going to be interesting in some ways, but I think it's going to be decisive when it goes to Daniel Suarez.
I'm going to be conservative once again here. I think when you see a smart
Quit being
bet,
a tightwad.
well, I call it conservative. Hammond calls it a tightwad. I think he might be
calling you out.
Cheap. Okay, cheap.
I didn't want to go that far, but I will.
Frugal is the word. Frugal sounds so much nicer than cheap or conservative. Let's stick with conservative. When it comes to a head-to-head matchup, I got Joey Logano at plus 105 over Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney at minus 220 in this matchup. He's starting 19th. He qualified 19th, but he is going to the back of the pack. The team decided it would be worth it to make an adjustment to the car. You can't touch the cars after qualifying and inspection. They went ahead and did it, and that put him to the back of the pack, but they think he has time to move up there. I do not think he's going to get up and past Joey Logano, even though Joey is starting 21st. Look at that average finish, though, for Joey Logano. He averages a top 10 at this racetrack, so that's where we feel we can go.
I'm going to add another little verbiage to you.
Yes.
Gutless.
Gutless. Hey, come on.
Is that how you're supposed to call him out, Jeff C? Call him gutless, or, he's trying to tippy toe around. I'm just trying to go head on.
Conservative and frugal.
Yeah.
He's a very, very smart comparison shopper, and that's truly one of the keys to handicapping.
Thank you, Jeff. I do appreciate that. So earlier in the program, Jeff, we talked with Steve Mackinnon about something that's very interesting on the horizon. The prop bets are fun. If you go to NASCAR.com, they make fake prop bets. You can't actually go out and wager on them, but they're kind of interesting to look at here and there. There's things of the nature of is an odd number car going to win the race? Is an even number car going to win the race? But what Steve Mackinnon suggested was really pretty cool. You take a particular driver and you give them an over-under. You also talked about a trio of bets that was like a lottery. I think there's tremendous ideas out here, and they're not just pie-in-the-sky ideas throwing them out. These are things that I believe firmly would get race fans and wagerers interested in.
Without question, John. The NASCAR has so many opportunities to offer a variation of wagers and a massive wagering menu. I don't think there's any shortage of ideas or formats out there that'll prevent this from going straight to the top. It's just a matter of embracing it. And I think for a lot of the newer handicappers, being able to get a hold of some of the numbers is really so important to their new handicapping styles. And we're seeing NASCAR do that as well with the sortable 10 and 15 lap averages that they're now showing during practice sessions.
And you don't really have to go too far. You can just come to Racers Odds, and we'll take care of all those numbers for you. Hammond, if you got a choice, if there was one of those things that we talked about today in terms of prop bets or things you could wager on within the race, what would you like to see first?
Honestly, I think I like the over-under. I think that's really simple. It's not hard to figure out, and I think it gives you some options there. I like the fact that you can slide up or slide down to a certain degree and maybe make it more intriguing. And if you feel really confident about it, then you can make more money at it. So I think that's really something that if you're a bettor, you like the idea of being able to make more, if you're really feeling good about your research as well as your gut feel, it all coming together at one place at one time. I like that idea.
Well, one of the on-track trends we've seen so far this season is we've seen a lot of clean and green racing on the track. Now, we saw it at Sonoma, too. Even though it was the road course, there were very few cautions that had came out. We're going to scroll through some of the head-to-head matchups, and you can also see, scrolling at the bottom of your screen, odds for a particular driver to win the race. But with history in mind, Hammond, what do you think? Are we going to see some wrecking going on today, or is the only time we're going to have yellow flag pit stops going to be these stage breaks?
I think you've got some drivers up there starting up in the front, like Michael McDowell is going to be trying to hold his own. I think that people are going to have to fight Michael to get around him for his position, and we've already seen early this week. I'm talking about whether you're at Eldora on the dirt or whether you're in an Xfinity race on Saturday. A lot of guys are getting very impatient when people won't give them what they need, and you're having to take it. I think you're going to see some of the same thing going on, and the later we go in the race, the more the real estate is going to get more and more pricey. Guys are going to be less forgiving. So I'm not going to be one bit surprised if we don't see some more wrecked race cars or a lot more beating and banging because of it.
So, Jeff Cogliandro, what do you think when it comes right down to it? We know some more value exists in picking some of these groups or maybe the head-to-head matchups. But when it comes just to odds to win, who do you like today to take that checkered flag?
Well, I think if I weren't looking at numbers, I like Martin Truex to win. But I think when you start to bring in value, I like Denny Hamlin, who's now floated up to 10-1. I think he offers a tremendous profile going into this race.
Jeff, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate that for sure. Less than 20 minutes before green flag time and just a couple minutes left for us here on Racers Odds. Mr. Hammond, same question to you. When it comes just simply to a driver winning this thing, who would your money be on?
I like the numbers when it comes to Kevin Harvick and the fact that Rodney Childers, once again, I feel like they got some momentum. They got a little bit more flexibility because they're locked into the playoffs. They're looking to get either stage points or win points so they can, move on in these playoffs once they start. So I like him with the number he has and the fact that he's pretty darn good on these road courses. And more importantly, I like his crew chief and the way he a lot of times strategizes.
And let's remember that with a predictability scale of C given to us by our experts, C rating today tells us it's a very hard race to pick. So, Hammond, we may want to throw out some of these practice numbers and especially where someone qualified.
No, you got to look at we keep talking about strategy and long runs. You pointed it out, the first stage, 20 laps, guys can easily go there without any kind of problem. But once you get there, do you go ahead and give up your track position and come and make adjustments to your car, or do you stay out a little while and get basically off sync with everybody else? This is what's going to be important in watching how these guys play out the day. And the other thing is who comes to pit road to make adjustments to make their cars better.
So it is time to go road course racing up at the Glen in upstate New York. Sit back, everybody. Enjoy the race, and we'll see you next weekend on the Racers Odds.
This has been Racers Odds, a presentation of PRN, the Performance Racing Network.